The importance of names is because have you ever met a human being without them?
No.
Nor have I. So if you ever meet human beings without names, you don't have human beings.
It's cargo, right?
Right,
So,
cargo, absolutely, absolutely. And so we are the only people who folks could talk about us and write about our history without ever naming us. But that's because in the Western imaginative space, right, Black existence, this is not a history of human beings. It's a history of these Black items in relationship to white supremacy. We're really studying white people's history of what they did to Black people. That's not the same thing as Black history. That's not Black history. Like the Middle Passage is really white history. Well, how do you know? Who owned the ships? Those are not our boats. Where were they headed? Somebody else was driving those boats. That's European history. That's the history of how Europeans moved Africans from Africa and spread us throughout the diaspora. It's not Black history. Black history is what we did to survive it when they were not looking. That's Black history.
Good people, what's up, what's good, man? Blessed be your host, Caleb Smith. Today, we have a very special guest in the building. I've been following this great brother for a minute. Shout out to the masterful Karen Hunter from tapping into her show, reading books like The Coming.
Yes.
I was just blown away. Man, this brother right here is beyond spiritual, wise, master teacher, award-winning author, professor at Clark Atlanta University. Found a way to make one.
That's right.
Yes,
that's
sir.
Right.
The HBCU in Atlanta. Dr. Black, how you feeling today, bro?
I'm absolutely fantastic. I'm glad to be here. I've been waiting on this a minute, brother.
Yes, sir.
So I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. All in due time. The Coming. I just bought this book a few weeks ago. Started reading it. Y'all, please, man, tap in, read this. Don't Cry for Me. I'm going to tap in with that one. Black on Black, too. Most recent one. The Coming. You said one quote on Karen Hunter's show. It doesn't matter if it's a household name, as long as it's a village name.
Yes.
What does that mean? I felt that.
That means I wasn't writing The Coming or any of my other books, quite frankly, in exchange for people's praise, in exchange for people's applause. Certainly, I want people to read the book. Yes, certainly. And certainly, I would love to get to the place where I can write full time, right? But what I really want is for the book to make an impact, right? I understand influence to be far more important than money. And so I really want to change the world for Black people, right? And by doing that, I feel like I'll do my life's mission.
Come on.
And so, when I say that I'm writing for the village, I'm really much more concerned with the ways in which my words and my books impact our consciousness than I am with whether or not I'll get rich from doing it.
Come on, I love that. Blackwell, Arkansas.
Yes.
Talk to me about, man, those roots growing up with grandma. I'm a grandma's boy.
Yeah.
Spent every summer with my grandma in the country. So I feel that on that story. So what was that like growing up around your grandmother?
Without my grandmother, I'm not sure I'd be here.
That's right.
And it was really my great grandmother, born in 1894.
Come on.
And she was really a magical Black woman. She didn't play, but she loved me. And more importantly, Caleb, than I think loving me, she knew who I was before I knew who I was.
Come on. Yeah.
Right. And the person God had sent, she respected and she adored. Most other people I met as a child and even in my adult life, they tolerate me and they're hoping that I'll become something normal, something regular, something palatable.
That's right.
But my grandmother always knew that that I was sculpted differently. My grandmother always knew that that I was a gifted kid, right? And she would tell me in all kinds of ways, and some of them very subtle ways. She would say things like, "If you won't change yourself, the world's gonna follow you one day." She'd say things like that. Or she would say, before you count up the things you ain't got, make sure you pay attention to what you got that ain't nobody else got. And so there are all kinds of ways that she was really trying to tell me that God had done something special in my creation, right? I didn't get it then. It took me years and years and years to get it. But she certainly planted the seeds of that consciousness.
Come on now. Reading the Bible.
Yes.
The Bible verses, 1 Corinthians, I
absolutely.
believe. What was that like, and how did that mold you for who you are today?
Well, that same grandmother, she had been a school teacher all of her life. Right. She was probably 80 when I was born.
Wow.
And she had been a school teacher most of her life. And she was one of the few people in rural Blackwell, Arkansas, who loved reading. But I loved reading because I loved her, right? And as she got older, my job was to read to her. And she loved when I would read to her. And I loved it too. And she got to the point where she would have me act out the characters more than just read the words on the page, right? And I think she was preparing me to be a writer, though I'm not sure she or I knew it. But it certainly prepared me to love words and to love the rhythm of language, and to love the cadence in Black idiomatic speech. And I loved preachers talking, and I loved, when preachers would start doing the hum, right? Yep. I just loved, I didn't know where that came from as a child, but I love the musical nature of that language. And I was the church musician, right? Sir. So all this music in my world, in my language, in nature, in people's speech, in the way people walked, right? And my grandmother was very instrumental in making sure I appreciated that kind of cultural inheritance.
That's right. Yeah. Clark Atlanta, how did you end up all the way in Clark Atlanta University? What was that whole experience like?
Well, to be honest, I come from poor folks in Arkansas.
Yes, sir.
And Caleb, I was really going to any school that would pay me.
That's right. I feel you.
Yeah. If it was Alaska, I would have gone there.
That's right.
Easily with, without thinking about it twice. Yeah. And I applied to many schools. I was very academic. I was good in school. I applied to many schools, and I got into all of them. Various ones of them gave me money. But Clark, which was Clark College at the time, Clark College gave me the most. Tuition, fees, room, board, books, the whole thing. Wow. So I said, well, that's where I'm going. I don't know where it is, but that's where I'm going. Yes, Found out, of course, it was in Atlanta, and the rest is history, as they say.
I love that. Temple, what was that whole grad school time like with people in the likes of Dr. Greg Carr?
Sure. Dr. Carr is a legend. Dr. Carr is my mentor, though we're the same age. But Temple was... It was a magical moment. It was really a historical moment because that was the first years that Temple University was conferring the PhD in African American Studies anywhere in the world. Yeah. And we were in that first class, that first cohort. And it was the most remarkable academic experience I could ever have had. Everything we read was about Black people. And I had never had an experience like that. I mean, the literature was about Black people. The history was about Black people. The social science was about Black people. The politics was about Black people. We read about Africa and the Caribbean and the Berlin Conference and Patrice Lumumba and Nkrumah and the Negritude movement and the Harlem Renaissance. I was like, my God. And all of these are my people,
Isn't that crazy?
It was just, it was something hard to explain. But if I could do it over again, it's one decision I'd make in a heartbeat.
I love that. Hearing you say that you have your PhD not in African studies, but Africana studies.
That's right.
Can you please explain that overall difference between Africana studies and African American studies?
Sure. Africana studies is really the study of African people in the diaspora, right? The Americas, the Caribbean, etc. It's really the study of, in many instances, what happened to the children of Africa, right? African studies is the study of the continent of Africa, right? And the very complicated nature of that continent and its impact and its role in the world. The two are certainly related, but they're not identical. It's like studying the mother and father and then studying the offspring.
I love that. Don't cry for me. Masculinity, right now is one of the buzzing topics, toxic masculinity.
Right.
What does healthy masculinity look like?
What does healthy masculinity look like? Well, brother, I have a notion of it, which I'll certainly share, which I don't think most people are going to agree with, and that's okay. But the first thing that I think is very important for a healthy masculinity is that it is a masculinity that is not troubled or is not belittled by variant masculinities. That there are as many different kinds of masculinities as there are fish in the sea. Right? And I think the brilliance of God is that God didn't make one type of anything. Nothing. There's not one fish. There's not one type of tree. There's not one kind of flower. Right?
Yes, sir.
Right? Even among evergreens, there are different kinds of evergreens. There's not one kind of animal, right? There's not even one kind of butterfly. So there cannot possibly be one kind of man.
Come on. Yeah.
Right. So what I'm really saying is I think there are various kinds of men. I think there are various manifestations of men. I think there are various manifestations of masculinity. And I think a healthy masculinity is one that allows other masculinities to bloom without being insulted.
That's heavy.
Yeah, I think a different thing I'd say about masculinity is that we think too much of masculinity as a performance, right?
Yeah.
How a brother walks,
Yep.
how a brother talks, the depth of his voice, right? His heteronormativity, how pimped out is he, you know? And I think those are very, very childish and very, very elementary notions of masculinity. I think that to really understand masculine energy, one must really understand that you're really talking about a spiritual phenomenon, right? Not a performance, right? Masculinity, I believe, is really when a male being, and I start there because I think masculinity houses itself in maleness, meaning human beings, right? Who have male anatomy. But I don't believe it's automatic, as most people do. I don't think that just because a person is male, one automatically is masculine. But nor do I think because a person is male that he is necessarily a man either, right? But for that matter, I think a person can be male. I mean, a person can be a man and not be biologically male too, right? You know, we talk about trans existence, etc. But what I'm saying is, I think masculinity is ultimately what it means to walk the planet like God in a male body.
What does that look like, Dr. Black?
I think that looks like respecting all living things, all living forms. I think that looks like refusing to be insulted by other people's failings, other people's shortcomings. I think that looks like absolutely honoring and respecting a woman if a man is heteronormative. I think that looks like absolutely honoring and respecting a man if a brother is same gender loving, right? I think that looks like a one who goes out of his way to attempt to be whatever he imagines God is. Because I think the point of life is to see if a human being can imagine herself in the form of the divinity to which we pray. I think whatever you pray to is what you're supposed to become.
That's deep, yes.
Yeah, I think that's the point of praying to it, that ultimately you're supposed to be that. Else, or either God is just really arrogant, right? For us to just have to pray to God and bow down to God. I don't think God needs our adoration. I don't think God needs our exaltation. I don't think God needs it. I think we need it as human beings.
Ooh, that's a different type of conversation. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think, to look at you, Caleb, and say, I adore you. I honor you. I bow before you. I worship you, my brother. See, that does something for us.
That's that
God is so excellent, and God is so marvelous, and God is so perfect. I'm not sure that makes God feel better.
He already knows that.
God is so, surely God is already aware.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah. I feel that. Okay, so, on that same point, in the streets, you can say, hey, that's a nigga over there. Not, that's my brother over there.
Sure.
How do we try to change how we talk to each other? And also, what impact does seeing a quote unquote nigga have on I would say the black man's mind? Because then I don't see a friend, a brother, instead I see opposition, an enemy.
I think our use of the word nigga is the greatest sign of our love for plantation existence. I think every time we say nigga, we don't know it, but not only are we calling each other nigga, we're also calling somebody else master. I think we re-enter that construct every single time we use that word, and we use it as a people all the time. It's all in our music. It floods everywhere, and I think it keeps us locked. It keeps us incarcerated on the plantation, because then we end up acting like it. We end up treating one another like it. We end up believing we look like it. You know, we treat our children like it. You know, and I think the word nigga is absolutely poison to Black people. I really, really believe that. I think it absolutely poisons our notion of who we are. And until we get to the place where we understand the power of the tongue and we understand the power of language, what we call ourselves means everything in terms of how we respect ourselves, how we honor ourselves, or how we don't.
That's right.
Right? And it's the sign too that we think God and Jesus are white. Because we never call Jesus my nigga, but we'll call each other that easily. That lets you know we don't think Jesus is in the brotherhood.
Come on.
Because Jesus is too honored to be respected. Jesus is too respectful to be demeaned by being called nigga, but you ain't. Right? And so we never refer to our divinities the same way we refer to ourselves. That's the sign of self-hatred. Because I should be able to call you what I call God. And I should be able to call God what I call you.
That's right.
If there's a distinction, there's somebody I don't adore.
I love that. In the coming, you know, reading the book, I loved it. Starting out, our value system, right? Seeing how our people work together in the community. Everybody contributed. Everybody worked. How has exchanging our value system with a more Eurocentric value system affected us as a people?
Well, I think that it's, again, I think our self-love is sorely in need of repair. In fact, I think part of the sign that we don't really love ourselves is the distance we go to beautify ourselves. The distance we go to do hair, the way we shop, the way we buy shoes, you only have to beautify an ugly thing.
Come on. Yeah.
Right. If a thing is already divine, right, it requires no external attention. Which is why when people think of Jesus, how many pairs of sandals did Jesus have?
God, nobody talks about that. Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
How many pairs of clothes did Jesus? Who nobody knows, and nobody wonders it because his divinity covers the question.
That's what's more important.
Who cares?
Wow. Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Who really cares? You know, how many pairs of shoes did Frederick Douglass have? Who gives a damn?
Yeah.
But it's because we honor them. But in our lack of honor of ourselves, we have to transplant that honor with materiality. So we have to have closets of clothes and more shoes than we could possibly wear in a month. Right? It's materiality after material because we're trying to give value to a worthless thing.
Come on. I felt that.
Yeah.
Don't Cry for Me. What inspired that book? How was that whole time of creating that great masterpiece?
Well, yes, sir. Don't Cry for Me is the story of a Black man on his deathbed writing letters to his estranged son, trying to right the wrongs that he committed during his son's life in terms of how he didn't love him, in terms of how he didn't express that love, I should say. Trying to explain to him the ways in which manhood, masculinity changed from the 40s, 50s through the 60s, 70s, et cetera. And it's a very poignant story of intimacy and intentionality between Black men, between a father and son. And I wrote this book because Black men, Black fathers and sons, we've not done intimacy well since we left Africa 500 years ago. We've been afraid of our intimacy. We're afraid to touch each other, except in reprimand. We'll beat each other's bodies.
That's right.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
But we won't touch them soothingly.
Showing affection to each other.
Yeah. We won't hold each other's hand. Right. But I might knock you the fuck out, you know.
Right.
You know.
That's real.
And that's very important.
Yeah.
Right. It's very important. And so as Black boys, we grow up learning that part of the way you show your masculinity is the extent to which you're willing to beat Black flesh. And how well can you do it? And the bottom line, the ultimate discussion, the ultimate confrontation, the ultimate alleviation of Black tension is, can you whip my ass? I don't care what the argument is. It boils down always to, can you beat me? That's a deep thing. That's a deep thing when the ultimate question is always, which one of us can destroy the other? That's an animalistic existence, you know. And so I wrote this book because I wanted us to see as Black men, what is the cost? What has been and what is the cost of our lack of intimacy? And how much different would our lives be if we as Black men were able to hold each other's hand, to say, brother, I love you, right? And there are all kinds of substitutes we do. You know, we say, I have a friend of mine who just says the word love when he says love. And I said, well, that's the verb, but what's the subject?
Love what?
Who's doing this loving?
Yeah, that's right.
But what I realized is he's figured out a safe way
to say I love you.
Right. That's exactly right. Without the intimacy. Right. He just throws the verb out into the world. Right. Or we'll say, you know what? We can't say, brother, you are beautiful. We can say, hey, yo, man, that's fresh. Hey, man, you look all right. See, there are all these substitutes, right? Because the real vulnerability, we have not yet been given permission, or we have not taken permission to tell ourselves that we are fully and absolutely human in that way. But we do it to God every day. We say, I love God. But according to King James scripture, how can you say you love me, whom you have never seen?
But you don't love your brother.
Right. And here's the translation of that. You know what God is really saying?
What is he saying? You
might not like me.
If
you met me face to face, you really might not like me.
That's right. Wow.
You really might not like me because surely God's standard is higher than ours. So loving your brother might be the easier thing to do. Start there. That's one interpretation. You know what another interpretation is? If you love your brother, you won't need to love me. That will do. That will be sufficient. That love will be such an ecstasy that you'll find God in it. I don't know that God is something separate from what we are when we come together. Right? And so I wrote that book to really invite us as Black men to consider what has been the price of our inability to love each other fully. And I'm going to say this too. One of the things which I think we've never examined, I think there are ways we abuse Black women because we come to the table unloved. I think as Black men, especially heteronormative Black men, I think there are ways we use Black women's emotional space, we use Black women's sexual space, we use Black women's physical space, and to try to get all of the love and nurturing we need. And I think we drain women.
Explain, Dr. Black.
Because I think
I love this.
Because I think we drain women. I don't think women drain us that way because women freely love each other. Women touch each other. Women can do each other's hair. They go to the bathroom together. You know, we see it all the time. You don't know no men who go to the bathroom together.
Nah.
If a brother says, "Hey man, come go to the bathroom with me,"
like what? Yeah. Hey, you're right.
But women do it all the time.
You're right.
All the time.
Fix my hair for me in the bathroom.
Absolutely. Women can sleep in the bed with each other. Why can't we do the same? When 16-year-old boys spend the night, somebody sleeps on the floor.
Yeah.
Why? 16-year-old girls lay in the bed all the time.
Challenges all those ideas.
Yes. But see, we won't answer the question. Why? What are brothers scared of? See, we can't answer it. We won't answer it. And why won't women? What is it that women don't fear that we do? Do most brothers feel like I would touch you, so I better sleep on the floor? Ooh.
Yeah, start getting,
It starts getting, it gets real thick. It starts getting real intense. Or it's like, no, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to smell no man dirty feet. That's not it. That's not it. Because he can shower just like you can. See, that's not it. That's not it. But since we're not willing to do the analysis, what we will then do is go to a woman then, right? And we abuse women in all kinds of ways, even the inability to know what it really means to make love to a woman.
Yeah,
which is a very different thing than sex.
Especially now too, you know, with like OnlyFans, pornography, all of that. Yeah,
sure.
Please explain though, Dr. Black. Hey, I'm listening.
No, you know, listen.
I'm listening.
I just want to.
You can keep going. You
plant the seed of that.
You good.
I think that's very important though.
Yeah.
Because many times we're really trying to extract from women the physical nurturing that we don't get anywhere else. But that's a problem. It's a problem. It's a problem in any relationship if that person is the only source of your love and nurturing. That's a problem.
That's good.
That's a problem.
Love, right? Right now on social media, you know, you have the manosphere, you got women versus men on Instagram talking about love, black love. Sometimes, and I've heard you expound upon this point as well about a woman, you know, she can say, I want a sensitive man, but not too sensitive, right? How do we try to have like a safe space to where a man, he can be in touch with his emotions? And then is that possible to still have like a balance to where he's not quote unquote too sensitive, or is that thought process itself toxic?
I'm not sure what too sensitive means.
Right.
But see, let's be honest. Generally, what we mean by too sensitive is he too woman-like? That's what we're really saying.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Because what does too sensitive mean?
Right.
Like, when is he allowed to be fully sensitive? If his mama dies, can he weep openly?
Can he cry finally? Yeah.
Right. See, I mean, and must it take his mother's death? You see? So I'm not quite sure what that means, except that I know in this culture how much we hate femininity in boys. I'm very clear of that. Right. And that's probably more of what we mean.
Yeah. I feel that. Black fathers showing love to their sons, right? Why do you think that, like, so many times for a dad, he can say, good job, but not I love you or I'm proud of you? Why do you think it's so hard to show that love? But then, you know, sometimes with like a grandson, you can hug on him more. The grandson loves the grandfather, but the father, he doesn't get that same love sometimes. So why is it so hard to show love to your son?
Because I think what the grandfather knows, and the older a man gets, what he realizes is that most masculinity is bullshit.
When he starts to get older, he starts to see those things.
When you start getting older, you realize that most of the things upon which one has built one's life, it's meaningless. It has nothing to do with anything. Right. And the further you get in life, the closer you get to imagining facing God. And when you face God, will God really care? Will that really matter? Like, really? You know, and again, most of it is most masculinity is performance for power and privilege. Right? There's a certain way you walk, like as I said, there's a certain way most of that is because we think women like it. And so a woman is going to attach herself to me because of this masculine performance I'm doing. Well, once she does, and once you get married, what you doing now?
The show's over. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So as he gets older, then you raise a kid, but then you want your son to have somebody. You want, you know, and then you want your son to produce.
That's true.
And then you want your son to reproduce.
Yep.
Right. But the problem is that it's all a game. And there are some people who are sent to the world to reproduce, but not people.
That's a bar.
Everybody's not supposed to reproduce a person. Some people are supposed to reproduce ideas.
That's right.
Some people are supposed to reproduce spirit. Right? Everything in the world does not reproduce a thing, a physical thing. Some things reproduce notions of things. Right? Like, what does the wind reproduce? But we definitely want it. You see?
Yes, sir.
Right? What does the water reproduce? The fish reproduce fish, but if the water is not present, the fish have no context. So we do need the water. You can't live without it.
Everything has a role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But everything is not supposed to rename itself. That's really arrogance. Even this whole, Willie James Jr., Willie James II, most men dream of naming something after them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what's so interesting about that is, I think a brother should only consider that if he's truly excellent.
Hey, you got to be great to pass
I don't know
that
that you should consider that just because you black and male and exist.
That's heavy. That's heavy.
Name something after you if God would be proud of it. Not just because it looks like you. What is that?
Come on.
Hey,
you preaching, Dr. Black. Y'all, we about to challenge your ideas, notions, all of those things. I love this conversation. In the coming, our overall relationship with the water, right?
Yes.
Knowing that life begins with the water.
Yes.
What type of spiritual connection took place during that time, right? Of being on that boat, of people who were African people, who came from different tribes, to now about to change into a different group of people or names here in America. What happened on those ships?
Well, I think it's first important for us to get clear that none of us came from tribes.
Okay.
Right? We came from nations of people.
Come on. Yes, sir.
And the reason the language is important,
for sure,
is because when we talk about other people in the world, we never talk about them in tribes.
That's very true.
Right? There were no European tribes.
That's very true. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because terms like tribe, terms like village, right, make people think of primitive, uncultured folks.
Yes, sir.
You see what I'm saying? Right. And so these people from various African nations who were put together in these ships, they birthed spiritual traditions even on these ships coming across the water.
Yeah.
Right. One of those traditions they birthed is their relationship to the water. Right. Because when the ships land, Caleb, Black folks start singing about their time on the water and in these ships. And they're singing about them so that future generations will know that it's the water that actually carried them here. Right? This is why when we get to America, we start singing, wade in the water. We start singing, God's gonna trouble the water. We start singing the old ship of Zion, right? Because we're trying to leave a legacy for future generations to know that it's actually the water that did us the favor, right? It was the waterway that was the highway along which we traveled in order to get to this place called America. So water is sacred, water is holy, which means if you're going to get free, you got to go to the water. Well, how do we know? Because then when it's time to get free, now you got to cross the Mississippi to move from the south north. See, everywhere we're going, water is waiting on us, which means, if you can really understand what I'm saying, water then becomes a spiritual entity in the community, right? And which is why we pour a thing called libation.
That's right.
The whole point of a libation is to say, and to honor the water. Because you can't live without it. The body is 3/4 water, right? But the water also is doing a spiritual work among a spiritual people. Black folks get baptized, but they would dunk us under the water, you know?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But see, all of these references to water is really saying, don't miss the spiritual significance of what water is, why we've needed the water, the role the water played in Black life, the role the water plays in African spirituality, right? And when you know that and when you come to understand that, you'll then know that water is in fact a cleansing agent and a healing agent. So when you get in trouble, when you need to start over, when you need to get restored, get to the water.
That's right. Ooh, it's getting good. It's getting good.
Yeah.
Hurricanes, right? In the book as well. Very interesting. Hurricanes, they take that same track as the quote unquote Middle Passage, right?
Yeah.
What type of lasting effect do you think spiritually that the transatlantic slave trade played on the water?
Well, for those of us who know, see, when we go to the beach, if we really understood this before we got in the water, before we start playing, before we start walking around cute and sexy, which I ain't mad about, we would pay homage to the water first.
Before you got in.
See, African people, before we go to the beach and start being fly, our first role is to wade a little way into the water and to stop and look across the horizon and to give thanks. Because that water holds the spirit of millions of African people who traded their life for ours. And not to acknowledge that is the first sin of Black existence in the diaspora. Some of those folks jumped overboard in order that they could move into the ancestral realm and become our strength. Not to acknowledge that is the greatest sin conceivable. It's like you don't find any Jews, right, who can walk by a Holocaust museum and never blink twice. Right? You don't find that. That's not going to happen. Right. And that should be true for Black people too. And I vote for taking kids to the beach. Absolutely. But the first thing we're going to do before you play in the sand and build castles, right,
yes,
is we're going to stop and we're going to pay homage to this water.
That's right.
That must be done. That absolutely, positively must be done.
In the coming, hearing you speak about these people had names.
Sure.
Why is it so important for us as a people to not have this like misconception of, all right, transatlantic slave trade, that happened, but not like truly just understanding that these were our people and actual human beings like me and you who had names, who had identities, culture, spirituality, all of those things as well.
You know, I feel like you're trying to wind me up.
I am.
And I'm trying my best not to go.
Hey, I'm hoping that it's working.
Oh, God. See, the importance of names is because have you ever met a human being without them?
No.
Nor have I. So if you ever meet human beings without names, you don't have human beings.
It's cargo, right?
Right, cargo. Absolutely, absolutely. And so we are the only people who folks could talk about us and write about our history without ever naming us. But that's because in the Western imaginative space, right, Black existence, this is not a history of human beings. It's a history of these Black items in relationship to white supremacy. We're really studying white people's history of what they did to Black people. That's not the same thing as Black history. That's not Black history. Like the Middle Passage is really white history. Well, how do you know? Who owned the ships? Those are not our boats. Where were they headed? Somebody else was driving those boats. That's European history. That's the history of how Europeans moved Africans from Africa and spread us throughout the diaspora. It's not Black history. Black history is what we did to survive it when they were not looking. That's Black history. Right? And if we're not careful, we keep studying white understandings of Black history, of Black people. Which is why in schools they talk about Martin Luther King. You know, this is what all the kids know. Because Martin Luther King disrupted whiteness. See, what Black people did specifically for Black people is not in the history books. Well, Daniel Black, what do you mean? For example, Black people know the difference between dressing and stuffing. Anybody Black knows the difference between dressing and stuffing. There's no history book that's going to teach you that. But we know the difference.
That's right.
Right? And we know the difference between dressing and stuffing. We know the difference between chitlins and hog maws. We know the difference between cleaning up and straightening up.
For sure. Especially
Let
as
me
a
off
kid.
this podcast, please.
Hey,
Let me just
we
go
cook
to
it,
the house.
Dr. Black. We cook it.
But why is that important? Because those distinctions show you Black excellence.
That's right.
Our parents, you know, when we had certain tasks to do, certain chores, when we didn't do it right or didn't do it well because we didn't want to do it, they'd say, okay, you call yourself cleaning up this? See, what were they really saying? You know that ain't right.
Yes, sir.
You know that ain't right. Now you're coming back and we're going to do this again.
That's right.
But what they were saying is, that's not excellent, and you know it's not. But we never get praised for having those kinds of standards. Why? Because we were doing them for white people. We were doing them in white folks' houses. Right? It was just called servanthood. But really, there was Black achievement in the middle of it. The study of the Black achievement is what I mean by Black history. Right? Sure, Black folks marched. Absolutely. Yes, Black folks. Yes. I'm not, and I celebrate that completely. I'm a bit more concerned with who made the sandwiches as we marched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of I want to know when they marched from Selma to Alabama, and of course they didn't walk in a day. It took several days. I want to know where they slept at night, because I want to know those black people who covered them. See, that's what I want to know. That's Black history. I want to know what angels protected them in the midnight hour in the middle of Alabama in Black midnight. See, that's what I want to know. That's Black history. Grandmama Nim was praying hard somewhere, because the same clan that killed other folks, how come it didn't kill them when they were marching that? How come it didn't meet them in the midnight hour?
That's a good question.
Right. But that's because we knew something and someone invisible. And we conjured those individuals. That's Black history.
Getting good.
Yeah.
Walked into this next question then. Invisible, right? You said before, the things that we valued were invisible. A house, but actually a home instead, right? What were some of those things, if you will, that we valued?
I think music. There are no Black people who don't have an accompanying musical history. Music as in terms of invisibility. I think a thing people call prayer, which is really, our language in terms of talking to God. I think ritual. Black people always do ritual, even in ways we don't know it. Right? Ritual meaning the combining of the living with the non-living into one space, one ceremonial space. I think another invisible thing that's very, very important that Black folks always did, and that is this notion of community, meaning we are people who believe in gathering for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Right. And in those gatherings, we're strengthening ourselves. We're strengthening one another. We're restoring the soul, which is why hell or high water Black folks went to church for so many years. It wasn't the Bible that folks were running to, right? It was really us being together that was the requirement. Because in being together, you get rejuvenated, you get revived. Life force plugs into life force, and African people knew that.
Yes, sir.
We absolutely, this is the difference between going to a HBCU and going to a PWI, I think, right? At HBCU, you plug in all day, every day, right? At a PWI, you can get an education. The plugging in might be rough though at times, but Black spaces are spaces of a spiritual electricity constantly, when I went to Clark, it was probably the best 4 years of my life. It was the best I was always taken care of. I was always with somebody. There was always laughter. There was always joy. There was always hard work. We were always reading. There was always somebody who loved me. There was always fun to be had. When I went to Temple, in the African American Studies department was great, but the school itself, thousands of students could be around, and I remember just feeling lonely. And I was like, what is this? Who does this? But it's just the difference in terms of worldview.
That's right.
Right. And part of our worldview is that community saves human life.
Yeah. I feel that. The Black church, what do you think makes the Black church such a spiritual epicenter for our community?
I think the ultimate strength of the Black church, one, was what I said, that it gave us a place to meet and to gather. What I also think is the ultimate point of the Black church was to make sure Black people did ritual, as I said too, weekly, because ritual does that kind of strengthening. But the other thing is the Black church really structured and shaped what we call collective Black identity. The Black church was a place where we figured out in some instances, and it was the place where in other instances we created who we were and what we wanted to be. The Black church was places where they told you how to dress, how to act, how to think, how to talk, to stand up and do these Easter speeches, right? These Easter speeches, people really sleep on that. And it just seemed perfunctory, but it was not. Those Easter speeches end up creating a place creating people like Malcolm X, creating people like Shirley Chisholm, creating people like Martin Luther King, etc. They started out doing those Easter speeches. That's right. Because what the Easter speeches teach you is speak up, speak clearly, speak broadly, right? Don't be afraid. If you got something to say it clearly, say it loudly.
That's right.
Right? Say it with authority, say it with conviction. That those Easter speeches taught that process. And there was one time in the church where children didn't have an option.
Yeah.
If you were a kid in the church, you were going to do a speech.
I was one of those kids for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And if you act like you didn't want, you're going to get a whooping and then do the speech.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
But we thought that, this was just boring. They didn't have anything else for us to do. Yeah. No, those speeches were actually trying to prepare a people to be bold in the face of opposition.
That's right.
They were trying to prepare Black children to not be afraid to speak truth to power when your turn came.
Come on, Dr. Black. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
And our turn has come. Our turn has come. And I do public speaking a lot now. But I see now how it's so unbelievably directly connected to those speeches, because now folks ask, oh my God, Dr. Black, aren't you nervous when you have to go speak?
You've been doing this, huh?
Sometimes I am.
Yeah.
But I'm going to come anyway.
That's right.
I may be nervous, but I'm coming.
That's right.
And those speeches taught that.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, if y'all remember, they'd have you in the front of church, and the adults would go to the back of the church to see if they could hear you all the way back here. And if they couldn't, they say, speak up, baby.
Yep.
Right? Start again. They start taking off belts. Right?
Yes, sir.
Because you're going to do this. Why? Because what our ancestors knew is it is a dangerous thing to raise scared children who won't open your mouth in the middle of a country who is waiting for your destruction. We be sending our children into the lion's den if we did not prepare you to be able to open your mouth and to resist and to stand up and to say, hell no, from a people who are literally planning how they can dismantle you and demean you. Yeah.
Come on. Y'all, we about to get super deep now. You said one quote before that I was like, oh, I like that. About the Bible, right? Us as Black people here in the South, Bible Belt, of course, you already know, growing up in Arkansas, Black people do not play about the Bible, Christianity, but challenging our beliefs, our ideas. Hearing you say about Mary, right? What if Mary never asked to be pregnant?
You're going to go there.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Break that down, because I was like, wow, that's deep. Mary never asked to even be pregnant. What does that mean?
Well, the real thing there I'm trying to show us is the point is not so much about Mary, although I'll say something about it. The point really is our permission to question the authority of the Bible. That's the issue. Most of us have never considered this because we have been taught that Black folks don't carry the authority to question our spiritual origin, our spiritual context, right? And that's a dangerous thing. Right? That's a very, very, very dangerous thing. Because if a spiritual text can say, slaves obey your master, and I'm the descendant of slaves, then somehow my obedience to Western supremacy is part of my spiritual responsibility? Hell no. But that's the way we have lived, and that's the way we've walked. That's why we are more afraid to disrespect whiteness than Blackness.
That's true.
We'll call each other nigga. We'll call each other motherfuckers. We'll do all of this. And white people come in the room and we start.
Acting up in front of all these white folks.
Right.
Yeah. Hear people say
and we'll even say that. Yes. You showing your ass in front of these white people. Well, what was wrong with the ass before they got here? Right. The fact that you don't do that in front of whiteness, which means you don't do that in front of God. See? And that's what I want us to dismantle. And what I really want us to get to the place where it's really time that we write our own scripture. Right? We should write our own.
Come on, Dr. Black.
The Bible's done enough for its time. We should write our own. Because what somebody's got to realize one day, which seems so simple, but it's such a profound notion, somebody wrote that one.
Yeah.
And it wasn't God.
Yeah.
Some human wrote that one. And folks say, well, they were inspired by God. I am too.
All of us are, huh?
But see, we don't think that. We do not believe that. We do not believe that.
Why is that you believe, Dr. Black?
Because we give the authority of the Bible unto the Western world, unto white supremacy. And we believe they're inspired by God. And we believe they're inspired by God because their materiality is greatest. They have more things. They have the most things. They have the most money. They have the most power. Then they must have God's favor. See, that's a flaw in thinking. It is not true that the person most blessed is most divine. That's not true. Nor is it true that a person who has the most materially is the most spiritually centered. See, that's only a human flaw. Like if you look at the animal kingdom, when birds build a nest, they don't try to build a three-tiered structure, with all kinds of bedrooms. They build something sufficient for their need. Right? We want something that impresses the other animals. Right? Which is really, really like, does the giraffe really care? Does the giraffe really care what size nest bird you have? And much more importantly, what do you think about the giraffe that you don't think about yourself? That's the thing. Why do you want the giraffe to be impressed? Because you think the giraffe is divine. The problem is that you can never look like the giraffe. You can never be, you so far from the giraffe. And part of the problem spiritually is that our problem is we're so far from whiteness, we're trying to figure out how close can we get. And however close we can get, that's how much closer we get to God's favor. So then we want temples that look like their temples. We want churches that look like their churches. We want houses that look like their houses. We want to send our children to their schools. And we applaud when we're able to do that. Oh, my son went to Harvard. Right. And we expect black people to applaud for that. But don't no white people applaud because their white son is at Clark Atlanta.
Majoring in African American studies. That's right.
Right. Because they don't see blackness as a step toward divinity. We think whiteness is.
That's right. Come on, Dr. Black. Our people too, man, during this time, everybody's like on their grind, trying to get to a bag. Everybody's always like hustling. Time, it can fly by in that mind frame of always trying to get to like the next thing, the next thing.
Sure.
How do we try to slow down and not just get so caught up in this rat race somewhat?
Brother, I'm gonna tell you something I was teaching in class the other day. First of all, time doesn't fly. Time doesn't fly. When you waste so much of it, the little bit of time left seems to fly.
That's right.
The problem with grinding, brother, is grinding always means I was trifling for a while.
I got to make up for it.
Right. That's what grind means. Grind means I'm really making up for the 5 days I didn't do nothing.
Yeah.
Grind does not mean from the start of this project, I've been pressing and consistent. No, because if you do that, you don't need to grind. You can't plant a seed and rush its harvest. You can't grind that. You got to just wait. When a woman gets pregnant, you can't grind and get a baby in 2 months. You got to wait. But the baby is constantly germinating. And so what I'm saying is when a person is working on a thing or when you're doing a project, if a person will stay consistent, really the problem is lack of discipline.
That's right.
If a person will stay consistent, you don't need to. Grinding is going to always kill you because grinding will complete this project.
Not the next one.
But it won't take you to the next one.
That's right.
Because you destroyed yourself now. Because the point of a human life, the point of consistency is not to grind. It is to be disciplined. When a person is grinding, it's because what we're not announcing is I was trifling for a while, and now I believe I'm magical enough that I can do in 3 days what it takes other people 3 weeks to do. It's really arrogance.
Come on. What does having enough look like, Dr. Black? Because we could try to store up as much money as possible, as much food as possible, hoard clothes, sneakers, but what does having enough look like for a black person, the black family, our community?
Most of us have passed it so long ago that we have no notion whatsoever. Most of us, including myself, we're in so much excess. Right? That we have no notion of the beauty and the peace that enough would actually grant us. Which is why it's a side comment, which is why in our relationships it's so hard for us to maintain them. Because we do in our relationships the same thing we're doing with our clothes. We keep trying to figure out how to do more and more and more and more, and you can never get enough. Those of us who have too many clothes, we keep buying them. Right? Most of us have enough clothes never to buy any more clothes for the rest of our lives. Really. But who's going to agree to do that? Right? We'd actually have more joy if we did. But I'm saying that to say, and so in our relationships, we meet each other and we try to figure out if I'm enough for somebody else. That's the exact same question as having food in my refrigerator, but I go out to eat. I don't want that. Right? And so we'll say, I'm starving. You don't mean that. You're not starving. Right? You're not starving. Most of us are 20, 30 pounds overweight. How are you starving? And thick.
It's contradiction.
It's not true. It's not true. But also, I think that we're afraid of enough because we don't really believe in our own excellence, and we don't really walk with God. Because folks who walk with God understand that the job of the universe is actually to supply your enough as you supply the universe with your life force. Right? So really, I love that verse that says, the birds of the air have nests. I love that verse too. Yeah. So really, what are you worried about?
That's right.
The lilies of the field are taken care of. What are you worried about? What I'm worried about is I don't think I'm as beautiful as that lily. So I think God needs a little help taking care of me. And so I'm going to help God take care of me by storing up things that seemingly assure me, right, that I'll be okay. What it really is assuring you is that you'll be indebted to something else. Right? That's really what it's assuring you, that you'll be indebted to something else for the rest of your living days. Right? Wow. Because a beautiful thing, a really peaceful thing, a really marvelous thing is an entity that rises up in the morning and owes no one anything. And says, the great God who provided all things will provide sustenance in this day as well.
That's right.
And it's true.
Wow. And
it's true. And the deep thing is God's excellence is greater than ours. So why would I trust myself to provide for me more than God?
That's right.
But yeah, I'll stop there.
No, that's excellent, Dr. Black. I'm going to read a brief excerpt, too, from The Coming, because it was one page. I think it was page 46. I'm about to get to it right now. That got to me. I think it was the second paragraph. Right here. We needed our gatekeepers, those who traveled the boundaries of sexuality and spirit, those whose hearts and bodies knew no limitations. They could have told us how to heal rape from within. They would have reassured us that unless a body invites another's entry, the memory cannot linger. Yes, the sting would never be forgotten, but it need not govern one's consciousness. Our healers, right? During those times of our women and our men too, being raped, how important was it for us to have our healers present in those moments as well?
A healer is a person who comes to the planet to navigate his or her way through and around the human act of wounding. Right?
Yeah.
Meaning the first requirement of a healer is that a healer must be wounded. Right?
Yeah.
By design, a healer has to first be wounded. Why? Because they have to know the nature of pain. They have to know the art of hurting. A healer has to know the cost of what it means, right? To linger and to sit and to know disease, sometimes of the flesh, sometimes of the mind, sometimes of the heart.
Yeah.
So the first requirement is that a healer must first be a wounded person. Too many of us believe that our wounds are because somebody did something to me, somebody hurt me, my mama didn't like me, my daddy rejected me. It's not that at all. It's not that at all. It's because you're a healer, actually. And God made sure that you knew rejection, you knew disappointment, you knew pain, you knew difficulty. Because if you ever spiritually got mature and discovered that you were a healer, you would take all of that clarity over here to the other person, right, and save their life force. The job of a healer is to help all of us understand that the power to heal anything that has ever wounded you, the power to heal it is already in you. You cannot have a wound that your being cannot heal. If your being can't heal it, that wound won't come to you. This is why if you fall down right now and scrape your leg, the leg starts healing before you agree. You don't have to talk to it. It's already in it. All you got to do is sit still. And the healing starts running in your body to that wound. And it'll scab over. It's in the design to do it. But what I'm trying to help us see is that's true for the heart too. And I don't mean the physical heart, emotionally. My daddy left me. That could be absolutely factually true. And the wound of your father leaving you is the reason that you're going to become the senator. You're going to be the senator because your father left you. Not in spite of. Because your desire to transform human life will be because every single day you get up and you dream of what it means, right, to have a complete life. It won't let you go. That's why you become the senator. In other words, our wounds direct our living. Right? Not our joys, not our dreams, our wounds.
I love that.
And if a person could follow their wounds out, you can see your destiny. This is why you get here. Right? And this is very important. This is extremely important because it's so profound. Because even again, because so many people reference this, if you go back to this entity called Christ, right? Jesus was wounded, but the same one's wounded is walking on water. In fact, you can't get more wounded. They putting nails all in the man's hands. I mean, can you imagine the pain?
Thorns in your head.
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah.
All of that. Lying on the man, Pontius Pilate, all of that, right? And what Jesus says is, forgive them. They don't know who I am. They know not what they do. They don't get it. They'll get it. But the thing is, he got it. And so what I'm trying to help us to see is black people, the reason we were dispersed all over the world in enslavement is not just because white folks are evil, right? White people's evil was used. The reason we were dispersed all over the world is because the world needed an example of humanity and what humanity really is supposed to look like. We were so mad that we had to go do it, though. We haven't completed the assignment.
It's a mic drop, Dr. Black. Hey, I appreciate you, man. We are almost done, but this has been phenomenal. Stillness. What does stillness look like in this current time? Because all of us have cell phones. Everybody got TikTok, Instagram. Everybody's on YouTube. Everybody's watching TV, streaming, but not being still. How do we practice stillness right now?
Well, I think one of the things that's important to do at times is to step outside of technology, right? To put the phone down, to turn the TV off. And in fact, really, truly, I think, though people are not going to agree with me, for the most part, in terms of children, I don't think children should have technology in their rooms. I don't think they should have telephones. I don't think that, I think most children should have 2 pairs of shoes. I wouldn't give a child more than 2 pairs of shoes.
No iPhone, no AirPods, Dr. Black. 10 pairs of Jordans, no.
And, I might buy 1 pair of Jordans for a child. I might. You might have, and you'd have play shoes, school shoes, and maybe a pair of dress shoes.
And that's all that you need.
That's all you're going to get.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. A child might want more, and I'm not mad at that at all. That's why you'll leave here and go to college.
To get more.
See, but I'm being very serious.
Yeah, seriously.
See, we ruin our children's drive. We ruin their longing because we give them all the things that a person could dream. So we ruin their ability to dream. So their drive will be half of our own. We'll get kids 18 and we'll be like, dang, what you gonna do?
Right.
Right. But the reason they don't know is because I have 17 pairs of shoes. I've always had my own room. I got more than I can wear. In other words, in every direction they look, all possibilities have already been met and been covered for them. We're spoiling children as a mark of our own excellence, we think, as parents. But what we're really doing is ruining their imagination. I have a son. He's 25 now. And we never had a TV. And oh my God, he talked about me so bad. In fact, not one in his house. Sometimes I turn on TV, but I've never had cable TV to this point. Wow. I've never had it. Wow. I've never had cable TV in my house. Never.
That's how you're able to write all of these great pieces.
But see, well, you're saying something now.
Yep.
Right. See, in exchange for that, there's a different glory. Right. But if you could walk on water, would you really want a cell phone? Who would trade it?
Wow. I love that. Reading this book, I was like, 2024, I got to get back on reading. How do we start reading again? Because as kids, in college even, I was an avid reader, but it's like after school, you stop reading. You know, people come up with every excuse in the world. Oh, I'm working, I'm doing this, so I don't have time. How do we create time to start reading again?
Well, I don't think we ever create time, right? Time is always available.
That's true.
Right? Time is always available. I think the thing we do is recreate ourselves, right? And one of the things I think we should do is walk around with books in our pockets, right? I probably have 10 or 20 books in my car. I have books all up under, my comforter in my bed, if I have company, I got to clean all the books out, But I think carry books with us is one thing, which I think very, very, very few people do.
Yes, sir.
I think very few people carry books like on their being, right? The other thing I think that we have to do is embrace a wider array of beings and friends. Like most of us, our friends look like us. So if I don't read, my friends don't either.
Yeah.
Right. So you need people who read if you're going to read, because then they'll ask you about books. Right. And they'll ask you, hey, man, did you read such and such? Oh, man, no. Dude, you didn't read. Right. But see, if you don't get that, then it's going to be like, what up, my nigga? What up, motherfucker? That's what you're going to get. Right. It's like when you plant a seed in the ground, right? What the seed now needs is not other seeds. What the seed now needs is rain. Right? In other words, it doesn't need more of itself. It needs something drastically different if there's going to be a blooming here. It needs rain now, and it needs sun now, and it needs wind now. It needs the things it is not in order to beckon forth that which is within it.
Yeah.
Right? And so do we. Right? If all of our friends are generally like us, most of us are highly unintelligent, and we'll live that way the rest of our lives.
Yeah. How do we try to start changing that friend circle?
Well, I think we do things like this. I think you've got to be very intentional about it. I think you've got to find folks who walk in ways that you admire, and then I think we have to be bold and say, hey, bro, hey, be my friend, yo. You know what I'm saying? I want to roll with you.
Make it simple.
Right. And I'm going to tell you why this is important. I think most of us would hate Jesus, while most people think they love him and praise him. If Jesus walked on the planet today, that wouldn't be most of our friends. No. Because I'm not sure Jesus is going to smoke weed with you. I'm not sure Jesus is going to smoke weed with you.
He not going to hit the gas?
Listen, I don't,
No.
I get a feel, when you say, fuck that, I don't know Jesus is going to be like, yeah, But ironically, this is the one people say they love. So there's a disconnect somewhere. There's a disconnect somewhere. I mean, Jesus walked the planet, turning water to wine, healing the sick, raising the dead, and couldn't get but 12 members.
That's true.
12 people?
Out of the world. Wow.
That's a deep thing when you think about it.
That's heavy.
Jesus can get 12 members.
12 followers. Imagine that. On social media, 12 followers.
12 followers.
That's deep.
People have millions, and Jesus didn't get but 12. That's a heavy thing.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Black on Black. What inspired that? That's my next read. So what
okay,
inspired
Black on Black? Black on Black is an essay collection, and I wanted to say some things very directly, not kind of hidden in fiction, so to speak.
Yep.
I wanted to say some things in very direct, blunt, blatant form, and I pray I did that.
Yeah.
You know, there's an article, an essay in there about the Black church. There's an essay about integration. There, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Essays about self-love. I wrote an essay on Ava DuVernay's "When We See Us," which just devastated me when I saw.
Yeah, it was a heavy piece.
Oh my God, Lord have mercy. So Black on Black is inviting us as Black people to have these conversations about Black institutions and how we keep them, or what the cost is going to be if we don't.
Yes, sir. Speaking on that, right? Integration. That's a topic that, you know, I try to study more, right? Behind you, of course, Malcolm and Martin, people mistakenly try to separate them, and one is the face of integration, one is the face of, you know, staying separate, which is the wrong parallel, correct? Integration, do you feel like it was like a total bad thing for us, or are there any positives that we could take away from it overall? How do you feel about it? The biggest thing is
I think it never happened.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, but I also think it was a bad idea. I understand why our ancestors did it, though. I get it. I get it. But if I had my way now, I think I would return us to integration. I mean, to segregation.
Yeah, I agree. Why is that, though?
Because there are Black gems. There are Black institutions. There are Black things that we lost in integration that I don't know that anything we've gained was worth it. Absolutely anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that I think we're better now. We're more materially prosperous. But see, you know, we talked about that.
Yeah.
You know, that materiality is a tricky thing, and it's a trick bag. The more material we get, the less spirit. We have to trade spirituality for materiality.
What does that look like, us being in our actual spiritual bag opposed to being worried about the cars and the clothes and all of that?
You know, again, I don't know what it would look like today, but I know what the materiality looks like, and it has not served us well. Because as we're becoming more and more spiritual, we're sending more of our sons to jail. As we become more and more material, we're sending more and more our sons to jail. So something about the materiality is not saving us. As we become more and more material, our music becomes more and more demeaning. I mean, you know, I was listening, you know, some of my students introduced me to Sexy Red.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
know,
which song did they play? Pound Town? He's like, where do we begin?
I said, Dr. Black, you know, you got to check out Sexy Red. I said, okay, y'all. You know, I'm flexible. I want to grow. Play it for me.
He said, Booty Hole Brown, huh?
Booty Hole. Now, here's what's profound and not profound at the same time. What's deep is, again, yeah, fine, Booty Hole Brown. Ma'am, do you think you've made an announcement?
A brand new discovery. Huh?
That's not, ma'am.
Yeah.
That's not heavy. There's nothing heavy about that. If the goal is just see how vulgar you can be, then you win. But if you're reaching for any depth at all, ma'am, you must start again. You must start again. So it's not just the vulgar nature of it. I'm like, ma'am, you haven't said anything. You haven't said anything. There's nothing about that potentially transforms my life.
It doesn't. Our male rappers, they'll talk about my guns, I'll spin the block, my ops, I'll kill this nigga, I'll kill that. Our women, we talk about my vagina does X, Y, and Z, it's so wet. How can we try to change our narratives, right, of always thinking that we have to stay in the same creative box?
You know, I think the only thing I'm going to say, because I think there's some wonderful hip hop too, of course. You know, which we know.
Yes, sir.
I think the only thing I'm going to say is I don't know that we've done enough analysis on what really happened in hip hop to really understand this. Meaning, one of the things I think we've got to really think about and talk about is, I think what really happened with hip hop is America discovered how to purchase Black people's voice without the sanction of their elders.
Yeah.
You know, when you can give a 17-year-old Black boy $1 million
and a microphone,
right? A 22-year-old Black boy $1 million, and nobody else has to agree, right? We're in trouble. But see, we're supposed to have cultural apparatuses that guard against that. Meaning, at 17, even if I could have gotten by with it, my grandmother would have been so devastated if she had heard me say that. But see, without a young person having that connection to an elder, what damn difference does it make? All I'm trying to do is get money, just trying to get stacks, as they say, you know. And if I'm not emotionally tied to any elder who is serving as kind of coverage of my life, young people will do anything. But that's true of any young people anywhere. Which means really, hip hop really is exposing a crisis in eldership. In the Black community. That's the issue.
We flowing, because that was gonna be my very next question, right? Growing up, of course, you as well, you know, with your great grandmother, her molding you. I experienced a similar thing, you know, as well, having to read the Bible every single night before I go to bed, you know, spend time with her, learn from her. Why do you think there's this like disconnect between our elders and the youth right now?
I think this came from integration. I think this happened through integration too. Yeah, because see, integration separated children from their institutions. Meaning Black children now went to somebody else's school.
That's true.
Black children now are taught by people who hate us.
That is true.
See, in segregation, Black children were taught by the Black children who lived in their neighborhood. Were taught by the same Black children who taught them Sunday school. Who often taught by the same Black people who taught their parents.
Yeah.
Integration meant Black children now are taught by people who hose down their parents. Right? That's unbelievably important. That's unbelievably important.
Yes, sir.
When you send your it's like I've said before, when the gazelles send small gazelles to the lion's academy, right? The notion that those gazelles are going to come home loving themselves is a long shot. That's a long shot. That's probably not going to happen. Ooh. The Lion's Academy doesn't teach gazelle love. In fact, the Lion's Academy teaches how to devour gazelles. We eat, right? So what are they going to teach these little gazelles? What are they going to teach them? I mean, how are we going to refashion what we believe? How are we going to refashion what we teach so that these gazelles can graduate from this place? See, it's what can you? How you gonna rename? It's never gonna turn out right.
Ooh. To your point, Dr. Black, growing up in school, Robert J. Birch, if y'all went there in Fayetteville, I went to school there. It's like 20 minutes south of here. But every single Friday, they would play "I'm Proud to Be an American" on the TV. Oh, you know, as a kid, you're like 5, 6 years old. So, of course, you'll like sing along, it's Spirit Day on Fridays. And then it wasn't until I'll probably say in college, you know, taking African-American studies, I realized I was like, whoa. I was being brainwashed singing "I'm Proud to Be an American," where at least I know I'm free, da-da-da-da-da. And it's a country singer, of course, who you know don't like Black people. There was no Black people at the concert, any of that. What type of subconscious effects would that have on a young Black mind of constantly being just like assimilated with that?
See, you know, you went to the school, so you could probably answer that better than I could.
True.
You know, but I think it means everything. I think what a child hears, I think what a child is taught, I think what we name children.
Yeah, that's true. Like George Washington and things like that.
Right. Yeah. And not just that, but Philip, Anthony, Mark, Jack, Daniel. None of these are our names.
It's not.
None of these are our names. And in fact, we seem to hate our own names. Right. We seem to love European names so much that we give the names of our slave masters to our children. Who does that? Except the people who are hoping that one day they inherit the big house.
That's right, Dr. Black.
Yeah.
Last few questions, then we'll be wrapped, man. I had a great time with you too, by the way. Rites of passage. How important is that? You currently are over that as well. Yeah. Yes, sir. Why is that so important for our people?
Because I think that's the way that's a way that we prepare our children to love themselves, to know themselves, and to perpetuate their own institutions. I don't think you can prepare children to love and know themselves without a kind of indoctrination process. And that's really what American education is. I'm not mad at it because it's supposed to do that. Children are supposed to know George Washington. They're supposed to know who Abraham Lincoln is. They're supposed to know the Gettysburg Address because they're in America. That makes sense to me. In fact, if I go to South Africa and children never heard the name Mandela, something is wrong. Right? But the problem here is though we're Black and we're Americans and we grew up in this place, we too know the Gettysburg Address and we too know George Washington and we too know Lincoln, right? But that's not our direct inheritance, right? These quote unquote founding fathers, those are not my fathers, right? My fathers did not write the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. Those were not my founding fathers. They were the founding fathers of this country. That's true. Those were my founding fathers were fanning those people when they were writing it, right? So for me, it's as important that a Black child knows Nat Turner and knows Denmark Vesey and knows Gabriel Prosser and knows Harriet Tubman and knows Sojourner Truth. A Black child is supposed to call those names because these are the people, right, who gave you their blood. That's right. It's that blood that you inherited. And when you understand that you'll understand you're unbeatable. But as long as as long as you're trying to claim somebody else's inheritance as your own, we'll hate what it means to be Black.
Second to last question. What are the 5 steps of love?
You know, I'm going to come back and we're going to work out the love, right? So
let's do it.
Yeah, I'm going to come back for that one.
Okay.
I'll just say simply that most people are doing toleration when they think they're doing love. Right? Being nice to someone and being kind to them and not disturbing them is not an act of love. Right? That is an act simply of human respect. Right? An act of love is where one makes room in your consciousness and you make room in your being for the coexistence of this other thing that you might not like at all, you might not even agree with, but it has the right to exist. And so you make room for it in the middle of your existence. That's love.
I love that. Dr. Black, where do you see yourself within the next 5 to 10 years? Upcoming projects as well.
Brother, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that because the only thing I can say is that I pray that I am still doing this work, which is the work of teaching us as Black people to love ourselves and to know that we can speak for God just as much as anybody else can speak for God. Beyond that, I'll have to discover it.
Come on, I'm with you. So I'll ask this then on the way out. How can we love each other more freely as a people?
I think by touching one another. I think we have to take the risk to touch each other's head, to hold each other's hands. We don't do this at all. To stand close to one another, to wash each other's feet. Right? Black men, we have a thing about feet. We don't even show our feet, much less wash, touch them, I know brothers who wear Timbs to the beach.
Gotta be from New York.
But there's all kinds of psychology behind that. But I think touching one another is extremely important and sacred. But I think most of us will be horrendously awkward in doing it. Yeah. Which lets you know then when we're having sex, most of us are being abusive. Because we don't do touch. We do punishment.
I beat it up, right?
Right,
Things
exactly.
Like wow.
Exactly.
Our verbiage.
Yeah.
Got you. Got to plug the book, of course. What can readers expect from reading books like The Coming and Black on Black as well?
Well, I hope they can expect to love what it means to be of African descent, that they can learn the price that was paid for their existence in this country, and that they'll be inspired to say, let me jump in this battle and make sure I prepare a world for the next generation of Black kids because our thriving depends upon it.
Yes, sir. Where can everybody follow you, keep up with your work?
Oh yeah, man. I'm on Karen Hunter's show,
yes, sir.
Once a month now, every third Monday.
I love it too.
Yeah, every third Monday I'm there.
Yeah.
Instagram, Facebook, I'm always doing something. I've got a new book coming out. in the new year. So I'm around.
Okay. Dr. Black, I appreciate you greatly.
Absolutely.
Thank you for all that you do. You
Thank
are
you,
phenomenal.
brother.
So I appreciate you, man, for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Yes,
brother.
sir.
Absolutely.
Y'all, man, make sure to follow Dr. Black, The Coming. Tap in with that. Black on Black, Don't Cry for Me, and so much more, man. Thank y'all so much for always showing love. Until next time, blessed be host Caleb Smith. Peace.